Book 11, Part 1 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Drew Altschul. Metamorphoses by Publius Ovidius Naso. Translated by Brooks Moore. Book 11, Part 1. While with his songs, Orpheus, the bard of Thrace, allured the trees, the savage animals, and even the insensate rocks to follow him. Ciconian matrons, with their raving beasts concealed in skins of forest animals, from the summit of a hill observed him there attuning love-songs to a sounding harp. One of these women, as her tangled hair was tossed upon the light breeze, shouted, "See, here is the poet who has scorned our love," then hurled her spear at the melodious mouth of great Apollo's bard. But the spear's point, trailing in flight a garland of fresh leaves, made but a harmless bruise and wounded not. The weapon of another was a stone, which in the very air was overpowered by the true harmony of his voice and lyre, and so disabled lay before his feet, as asking pardon for that vain attempt. The madness of such warfare then increased. All moderation was entirely lost, and a wild fury overcomes the right. Although their weapons would have lost all force, subjected to the power of Orpheus's harp, the clamorous discord of their boxwood pipes, the blaring of their horns, their tambourines and clapping hands and bacchanalian yells, with hideous discords drowned his voice and harp. At last the stones that heard his song no more fell crimson with the Thracian poet's blood. Before his life was taken, the Maenads turned their threatening hands upon the many birds, which still were charmed by Orpheus as he sang, the serpents and the company of beasts, fabulous audience of the worshipped bard. And then they turned on him their blood-stained hands, and flocked together swiftly as wild birds, which by some chance may see the bird of night beneath the sun, and as the savage dogs rush on the doomed stag, loosed some bright forenoon on blood sand of the amphitheatre, they rushed against the bard, with swift hurled thrice, which, adorned with emerald leaves, had not till then been used for cruelty. And some threw clods, and others branches torn from trees, and others threw flint stones at him, and that no lack of weapons might restrain their savage fury then, not far from there by chance they found some oxen, which turned up the soil with ploughshares, and in fields near by were strong-armed peasants, who with eager sweat worked for the harvest as they dug hard fields. And all those peasants, when they saw the troop of frantic women, ran away and left their implements of labor strewn upon deserted fields, harrows and heavy rakes, and their long spades, after the savage mob had seized upon those implements, and torn to pieces oxen marred with threatening horns. They hastened to destroy the harmless bard, devoted Orpheus, and with impious hate murdered him, while his outstretched hands implored their mercy. The first and only time his voice had no persuasion. O great Jupiter, through those same lips which had controlled the rock, which had overcome ferocious beasts, his life breathed forth, departed in the air. The mournful birds, the stricken animals, the hard stones, and the weeping woods, all these that often had followed your inspiring voice, bewailed your death. While trees dropped their green leaves mourning for you as if they tore their hair, they say sad rivers swelled with their own tears, naiads and dryads with dishevelled hair wore garments of dark colour. His torn limbs were scattered in strange places. Hebrus then received his head and harp, and wonderful, while his loved harp was floating down the stream, it mourned for him beyond my power to tell. His tongue, though lifeless, uttered a mournful sound, and mournfully the river's banks replied. Onward borne by the river to the sea, they left their native stream, and reached the shore of Lesbos at Methymna. Instantly a furious serpent rose to attack the head of Orpheus, cast up on that foreign sand the hair still wet with spray. Phoebus at last appeared and saved the head from that attack. Before the serpent could inflict a sting, he drove it off and hardened its wide jaws to rigid stone. Meanwhile, the fleeting shade of Orpheus had descended under earth, remembering now those regions that he saw when there before he sought Eurydice through fields frequented by the blessed, and when he found her, enfolded her in eager arms. Then lovingly they wandered side by side, or he would follow when she chose to lead, or at another time he walked in front, looking back safely at Eurydice. Bacchus would not permit the wickedness of those who slaughtered Orpheus to remain unpunished. Grieving for the loss of his loved bard of sacred rites, at once he bound with twisted roots the feet of every one of those Edonian women who had caused the crime of Orpheus's death. Their toes grew long, he thrust the sharp points in the solid earth, as when a bird entangled in a snare, hid by the cunning fowler, knows too late that it is held, then vainly beats its wings, and fluttering only makes more tight the noose with every struggle, so each woman fiend whose feet were sinking in the soil when she attempted flight was held by deepening roots, and while she looks down there her toes and nails and feet should be, she sees wood growing up from them and covering all her graceful legs. Full of delirious grief, endeavoring to smite with right hand on her changing thigh, she strikes on solid oak. Her tender breast and shoulders are transformed to rigid oak. You would declare that her extended arms are real branches of a forest tree, and such a thought would be the truth. And not content with this, Bacchus resolved to leave that land, and with a worthier train went to the vineyards of his own Tmolus and to Pactolus, though the river was not golden, nor admired for precious sands. His usual throng of satyrs and of bacchanals surrounded him, but not Silenus, who was then detained from him. The Phrygian folk had captured him, as he was staggering, faint with palsied age and wine, and after they bound him in garlands they led him to their king, Midas, to whom with the Cecropian Eumolpus, Thracian Orpheus had shown all the Bacchic rites. When Midas recognized his old-time friend Silenus, who had been so often his companion in the rites of Bacchus, he kept joyful festival, and with his old comrade, twice 5 days and nights. Upon the 11th day, when Lucifer had dimmed the lofty multitude of stars, King Midas and Silenus went from there joyful together to the Lydian lands. There Midas put Silenus carefully under the care of his loved foster child, young Bacchus. He, with great delight, because he had his foster father once again, allowed the king to choose his own reward, a welcome offer, but it led to harm. And Midas made this ill-advised reply: "Cause whatever I shall touch to change at once to yellow gold." Bacchus agreed to his unfortunate request, with grief that Midas chose for harm and not for good. The Berecynthian hero, king of Phrygia, with joy at his misfortune went away, and instantly began to test the worth of Bacchus's word by touching everything. Doubtful himself of his new power, he pulled a twig down from a holm oak growing on a low-hung branch. The twig was turned to gold. He lifted up a dark stone from the ground, and it turned pale with gold. He touched a clod, and by his potent touch that clod became a mass of shining gold. He plucked some ripe, dry spears of grain, and all that wheat he touched was golden. Then he held an apple which he gathered from a tree, and you would think that Hesperides had given it. If he but touched a lofty door, at once each door post seemed to glisten. When he washed his hand in liquid streams, the lustrous drops upon his hands might have been those which once astonished Danae. He could not now conceive his large hopes in his grasping mind, as he imagined everything of gold. And while he was rejoicing in great wealth, his servant set a table for his meal, with many dainties and with needful bread. But when he touched the gift of Ceres with his right hand, instantly the gift of Ceres stiffened to gold. Or if he tried to bite with hungry teeth a tender bit of meat, the dainty, as his teeth but touched it, shone at once with yellow shreds and flakes of gold. And wine, another gift of Bacchus, when he mixed it in pure water, can be seen in his astonished mouth as liquid gold. Confounded by his strange misfortune, rich and wretched, he was anxious to escape from his unhappy wealth. He hated all he had so lately longed for, Plenty could not lessen hunger, and no remedy relieved his dry, parched throat. The hated gold tormented him no more than he deserved.